I'm a skeptical optimist. That's what I am, a skeptical optimist. And skepticism then is woven through my writing about aspects of Los Angeles and the region. I'm not a cynic by any stretch of the imagination. I'm deeply moved by the things I see, and I'm eager to have my readers follow me into a richer, more realistic, less self-deluding understanding of where they are and how that place works.
Yo, welcome to another episode of In a Minute with Evan Lovett, coming to you live from the I Am Studios right here in the heart of Los Angeles. And today I have a guest that I will go as far as saying is one of my Los Angeles idols. He is on my Los Angeles Mount Rushmore, been called the Bard of Los Angeles. You know Vin Scully, you know Jonathan Gold, Huell Hauser. Well, DJ Waldie is the man that puts into words and puts into these books all the sentiments and ideas and insights that have inspired LA in a Minute and In a Minute with Evan Lovett. So DJ Waldie, sometimes known as Don Waldie.
Absolutely.
I am absolutely honored for you being here, and I thank you so much for coming to the I Am Studios.
How very kind of you to invite me. We've crossed paths many a time over the years.
Absolutely.
You know my work. I know your work. It's great to be in your studio and have a chance to chat with you.
Thank you so much. And again, look, before we even jump into anything,
yeah,
I just want to make clear to everybody who's watching that may not be familiar with you. If you like LA in a Minute, a vast amount of my episodes have been inspired by the writings of DJ Waldie in any of these books here, which I've read cover to cover numerous times. And I want to make this clear. Holy Land was kind of the book, and we'll get into all this, but Holy Land was the book that sort of put you on the map as an author.
It was.
And I see in there it's 1996 it was written, but I read an article that was actually written in 1992. Is that?
No. It was finished in 1995 and published at the very end of 1995, and the copyright date's 1996.
There you go. Okay, so 96, and then Becoming Los Angeles came out right when I was starting LA in a Minute. Mm-hmm. And then Elements of Los Angeles is his most recent work, which I believe was released, within the last couple months?
It's September 2.
There you go. So, that's right. That was my birthday. And
really?
Yeah, that's right. It was a very significant. But here's what I want to establish before we even get into this. DJ's writing is very specific. Unlike what I've seen before, they're not called chapters per se. They're all very little short sections. Some are as short as a sentence. Some are a few pages, maybe 6 pages at the longest. But it makes, in this day of short attention spans, makes it very easy to follow, very easy to read. And it's just so evocative, the verbiage that he uses, because the insight that you have is so clear and so unique on this city that we all know and love. And we have thoughts. It's so polarizing, outside of Los Angeles. And you're not a cheerleader. I'm definitely an unabashed LA cheerleader. I'd be on it. I'm honest about many things. But you are just starkly honest with your assessment and your insight. And I think that makes for this perspective that enables people to see the good and the bad of LA without necessarily getting sentimental, without getting caught up in the hype or the hate. And it's just a really unique perspective. First and foremost, can you speak on that for 1 second?
Well, the history of writing about Los Angeles is broken down into 2 broad categories. There's the boosters, you've been talking about them, and then there are the detractors. Those who said in the late 19th century, early 20th century, well into the middle of the 20th century, those who said Los Angeles was, the home of health and wealth and happiness. Oh, yeah. And those who came from the East Coast, oftentimes from New York City, arrived here, spent a week in Hollywood, and went away saying that Los Angeles is the anteroom of hell. It's the gateway to despair and broken dreams.
And again, you are such a master of your craft. And it's easy to say, and the truth lies somewhere in between. But you come with these observances and these insights that are laid out without judgment, without the weight of here's how you should feel about a certain place.
No.
Go on.
Well, my purpose in writing about Los Angeles, I could write about any place on the planet. I could write about any city. My books are not about Los Angeles per se, in the truest and deepest sense. They're about how people make connections with the place where they live. What's the mechanism by which people acquire a sense of place? How do they make some place they've just arrived at turn into a home? So these are questions that trouble Americans generally, because Americans are very footloose and move around a great deal, and we're all immigrants here in Southern California, except the Native American population, and those who have descendants from the Mexican population. But how do we negotiate our understanding of where we are? How do we create an image of that place? And what do we do when that image has to change? How do we talk about Los Angeles if it's not exactly the Los Angeles we knew anymore? If it's a different kind of place, what language do we have to develop to speak about it? And so I struggle with those questions in all my books, trying to find language, images, experiences, memories that bind my sense of place to the landscape and the environment and the atmosphere, literally the sounds and smells and tastes of the place where I live.
And you do such a beautiful job with it. And again, I want to, and I'm going to keep going back to this because this is important. Anybody who's watching is a fan of this show, is a fan of Ellie in a Minute. And whether or not you consider yourself a reader, I highly encourage you to get 1, 2, 3, all of the DJ Waldie books, because again, this is the thing, and this is the truth with me. You can see any of these books are dog-eared like crazy because you don't necessarily need to read them cover to cover as a narrative. What it really is kind of a collection of essays, observances, thoughts, and insights. And I often do this where I pick up the book, turn to a random chat. You have 1 to 5 minutes, and me, I'm a constant information processor. So you have 1 to 2 to 5 minutes, any given chapter, any different segment, any specific segment, and you have an insight and an observation. And we'll dive into that. But I want to introduce you properly because I get caught up. I'm excited. And also I got to give a shout to our sponsor, Arto Brick. Arto Brick is a 3rd generation LA American Dream story. They fabricate tile and brick down in Gardena. They have their manufacturing, supply all those jobs in Los Angeles. And it is a not just the American Dream story run by Armin, but they also provide some of the brick and tile for some of our most historic landmarks, Alvera Street, La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, Mariachi Plaza, amongst many others. So thank you, Arto Brick, for sponsoring this and many episodes and being such a great sponsor of the show. But now DJ Waldie, I talk about him as an author because that's how I know him the best. All these books. Holy Land was the first that kind of, catapulted your reputation nationally and dare I say internationally. Becoming Los Angeles was the one when I first started, I'm making these apply to me. When I first started LA in a Minute, and Elements of Los Angeles, new one. But there's also LA River. There's Real City with Marissa Roth, Where Are We Now, No Circus with Randy Malkin Steinberger, and California Romantica with Diane Keaton.
Yes, yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
And we're going to address a little bit all those. But even prior to that, DJ Waldie, essayist, professor at Cal State Long Beach, is that correct?
Very briefly, I was an adjunct professor and a fill-in teacher at Cal State Long Beach after I had graduated from UCI with a master's degree in comparative literature. I taught very briefly at Cal State Long Beach. And then after that, went to work for the city of Lakewood in late 1977 and stayed there for my entire career, retiring on the books in 2010 and carrying on for a few months after that to help my successor on board. And so I left the employ of the city in September of 2011. But I still am there because I am lucky enough to have been welcomed as a volunteer working to organize and present the city's historical materials, largely photographs, but other things as well, so that at Lakewood City Hall now, you can see displays of historic photographs and other materials, and soon to be more, that illustrate the past in Lakewood. And our website has a huge historical section with a long history of Lakewood, very formal, not like my books, but readable, but more formal.
More narrative, more chronological,
And lots and lots of historical photographs, lots and lots.
And look, Lakewood, it is paramount to say that this is where this all began, because that is where DJ Waldie was born. But that's also where some might contend that the modern world was born. It is absolutely one of the most impactful cities in world history. I don't think that's an overstatement to say, in that Lakewood was essentially built overnight. It was one of the first planned cities, one of the first successful planned cities. And whether it was the city hall, whether it was the shopping center, whether it was the schools, it corrected the mistakes from Levittown, which was the first, gridded city and tract homes and all like that. And it turned into a, I will say, beloved community. Although throughout the years, there may have been some eras where that might not be the case. But you have remained in Lakewood for the entirety of your life.
Yes, I still live in the house my parents bought in 1946, and I was brought there on a smoggy Wednesday afternoon in 1948. And have lived there my entire life. So I am someone who is bound to a place in that sense. But I have learned by thinking about places and thinking about a sense of place, I've learned to expand my understanding of places to include more of the Southern California landscape, not just the city of Los Angeles, which is a political unit, but all of Southern California, because all this landscape is connected. And what is happening in the valley has a bearing on what's happening down by Long Beach, where I live.
Absolutely. And you went to UC Irvine, right? You mentioned that you went to UC. Did you commute while you were going? How did you get to school? Or did you actually live away from Lakewood?
I did. I had a housing in the graduate student housing complex at UC Irvine at that time. And because I'm not able to drive. So I was not able to commute from Lakewood to Irvine.
Let me ask you about that. You mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, you're legally blind.
No.
What's there's a vision issue, though,
I have, from childhood, I've had a number of vision issues, a boring collection of conditions. What they do is they leave me without much depth perception.
Okay.
So I would be a menace on the highways. Now I understand
would be different than any LA drivers.
I understand there are a lot of other menaces on the highway. I didn't want to add one more menace to the commute and the travel of Angelino. So without much skill or capacity to be the kind of driver I wanted to be, I never really learned to drive, and I've never owned a car.
Now, I think that, and I remember, I read through Holy Land, and I think it was Becoming Los Angeles that I sort of put together that I'm like, wait, is that a main reason for your incredible insights and perspective? Because you are, and I know this from doing my stories, when you're in a neighborhood on foot, you definitely take in a lot more of the atmosphere, the people, the actual feel of that particular place where you are. And you've essentially lived your life like that. How much does that contribute to these insights?
Enormously, Evan, just as you've said, and just as you've experienced. Being a pedestrian, and I'm obliged to be a pedestrian, has given me a hugely rich body of experience in the air, the light, the scents, the sounds, the terrain of Los Angeles. Things you don't get when you're riding in a car. You have this shell of sheet metal and plastic. When you're out in the weather, as we are having today, as we're taping today, you feel things and a sensuous understanding of place. A sensuous understanding of place is incredibly rich and informative.
And that's sort of the information. Is that what you would say inspired you? Let's go into the origin story of DJ Waldie. So as you're growing up in Lakewood, and you mentioned, listening to Vince Scully with your brother, I believe, is a formative memory, and your father I want to say worked for McDonnell Douglas.
He worked for the gas company.
Oh, for the gas company. It was some LA institution, right? But Lakewood, and you're growing up. At one point, are you accumulating all these insights? Were you writing? What kind of child/adolescent were you that sort of led to this career that you've now had as one of the most important chroniclers in Los Angeles history?
Well, I don't want to peg everything to my bad eyesight, but it's part of it. As a young man with bad eyesight and getting worse over the years, I became someone who was deeply into reading. Because I couldn't play ball, I couldn't play baseball, I couldn't play basketball. Yeah. A lot of those games that involve something flying at your face, not very good for me.
Depth perception really helps for those sports, especially baseball. Yeah, right.
So I was a big reader, and I got lost in stories. So to answer your question from the sort of the ground-based level, it was not so much that I was an explorer of local history when I was a grammar school student or a teenager, but I was engaged and enmeshed in stories, all kinds of stories, any kind of story, and so I learned perhaps from that the rhythms of the structures of telling a story, and as I became more a writer on my own part, I applied those lessons as a writer.
And it's things like this. I want to just give examples of these kind of observances and insights we're talking about. And place where I was inspired by DJ is, the street lights. I didn't realize just the variety of beautiful street lamps that we have, community, or the sidewalks. I'd always been riding my bike, walking on the sidewalk, and you see the names etched in, but you don't stop to think about it. Or most people don't stop to think. But these are things that have made up these little segments, and they all combine to tell the bigger story of Los Angeles. Because when you stop and think about any of this individually, you're like, wait, why are the lampposts in Silver Lake different than Studio City, different than Wilmington? And then the sidewalk, who is Tryon and Brain, these names on my sidewalk in 1929? And then you look deeper and you're like, wait, 1929, the sidewalks went in. So that's probably about when this neighborhood, and it all ties into the history and the development of Los Angeles, which, as we know, is so vast and unique. Go.
See, this is what you do, Evan. This is what you do. You pay attention. And that's all my books are about paying attention. They're advice to readers, actually kind of hope that they'll take. Advice to readers that to be part of a place, you need to pay attention to the details, to the aspects of it, to all the aspects of it, to the minor things, the ordinary things, the really simple things that you overlook. The overlooked stuff contains worlds of meaning.
Wow. Yep. And it absolutely does. And it's again, I want to reinforce, turn to any page in any of these books, and there's going to be something that you're like, I've never thought about like that. And it's such a great insight. So what point did you realize you're working, you did the adjunct professor at Cal State Long Beach, you're working for the city of Lakewood.
Okay, so for the city of Lakewood, I'm the public information officer. Yeah. I'm the city's official storyteller.
Yeah.
So in my everyday work for the city of Lakewood, I'm writing materials, right. Articles for the city newsletter, speeches for city council members, position papers, analysis of federal and state legislation. I'm constantly putting together words that are designed to inform my bosses, inform the general public about what's going on in the world around them and going on in Lakewood. And one of the very first things I was asked to do back in 1978 was to take the historical materials that had existed already for the city of Lakewood and write a brand new city history. So that moment of being asked to write that city history, that began the process of me learning more and more and more about Lakewood, which ended up in Holy Land, and learning more and more about Southern California, the big thing we call Los Angeles, not just the city of Los Angeles, and applying what talent I have and what capacity I have to pull narratives out of the ordinary stuff of the world. That led to the books that that you've read and have enjoyed.
So it started as part of the job, huh?
It begins with bad eyesight and a good job.
There you go. And I want to, so let's get to Holy Land, because that was the seminal work, and that really uplifted my viewpoint on Los Angeles. This was before LA in a Minute, before any of the seeds were percolating. And I didn't know Lakewood. I knew of Lakewood, knew there was a Lakewood, and that it was a suburb down somewhere in the southern part of Los Angeles. And even though it is a book about Lakewood, it has so many insights and observances that apply to Los Angeles. When it first came out, and I went back to some old reviews from 1996, it was called Lyrical and Unsentimental.
Yes.
It was called Quirky, Haunting, Breathtaking, and Inspiring. It was called Odd and an Oddly Moving Memoir. And that, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. Oh, and one more. Steve Berg of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Poetry and meaning in the confines of regular life. And I think...
I remember that review.
And I think, I hope so, it's a good one. No. And I kind of think that that's what makes it special, because you're talking about a place that an LA native, born and raised, again, had heard of, not thought about. But as you're reading page by page, you're like, this isn't just Lakewood that he's talking about. Even though the specifics are very Lakewood, but you're like, this is everywhere, not just in Los Angeles, but in quote unquote suburbia.
Exactly.
Which had been so polarized, so much ink has been spilled about the evils of the suburbs and everything like that. But the quote unquote, the presumption that the ordinary lives of ordinary people have a unique value.
Indeed. That has motivated me from the very beginning. As a public employee for the city of Lakewood, that was the focus of my work. Those ordinary lives had value, and I wanted to tell residents of Lakewood about each other, about their lives, and about about the making of their city when I was working in the city's official history. But just as you say, although Holy Land is a book about a particular place with lots of details about the particularity of that place, it's really an attempt to speak about how any place can be talked about, how anyone, anywhere can begin to look at the particularities of their place and find in them, as I said earlier, a richness that they didn't realize was there.
It's the richness, and that's something that in Los Angeles, a lot of people maybe take for granted. We love this city, and there's so many people that have LA pride, and I'm so proud that in Los Angeles we have that common sentiment. But it is the depth and the richness that maybe we take for granted or don't dive into enough to really let resonate, where it's like, I love this place, but why? What is it? And these are the things that you find in Lakewood, in this seemingly simple, nowadays turnkey kind of suburb where you can you replicate and duplicate all over the world. Look, in China, some of the suburbs look exactly like Lakewood from overhead. And it's an amazing thing, the impact that Lakewood has had without really being spectacular, quote unquote, in its own right, in a traditional sense.
Exactly. Its ordinariness is very important to me. Its everydayness is important. I think our true lives are lived in the ordinary and the everyday. That's where we find hope and love, is in the everyday and the ordinary. One of the problems in talking about Los Angeles going back to the 19th century is it was always described as being exceptional. It was either the worst possible place or the best possible place. And it's neither of those things. It's an everyday place for the most part. It has some glamorous elements, but it's an everyday place for the most part. And we don't live you and I and your listeners typically don't live in the glamorous parts of Los Angeles or live in the glamour of Los Angeles. We live in our ordinary worlds. And how do we discover in that ordinariness the well springs of wholeness and connection, which for me defines partly what a sense of place is. If you have a sense of place, you have something about a place that I could, if I was being a little too romantic, I would say a sense of place has something to do about falling in love with the place where you are.
Yeah. And there's a quote you have, unfortunately, I don't think I have it written down, but it's about to truly fall in love with a place, how does it go? I'm terrible about, that's why I take my notes, but there's something about falling in love where you can't fall in love with the place unless you
are vulnerable to it.
There you go.
That was borrowed from a wonderful writer, environmental writer, a nature writer who's no longer with us, sadly, Barry Lopez. And Barry Lopez was writing about the Valley, where we are today.
Yeah.
And he grew up in the Valley as a Valley kid. And he wrote a stunning essay that he elaborated in a couple of other essays. It was a stunning essay about the Valley, growing up in the Valley. And he said that for a place to become real, or for you to have a sense of place, for it to be real to you, you need to be vulnerable to it. All right. So he was emphasizing the capacity of you and me, not just to be boosters of, or enthusiasts for, or have a generalized feeling of affection for. He needed us. He needed us as citizens, as residents of a place, to feel a tenderness, to feel that we ought to be careful for, to take care of, and that is very hard to do in Los Angeles, to feel vulnerable to this place, because it's a place that's very distracting, and it pushes people away in lots of ways, and it has engendered an attitude among lots of Angelenos and those who live in the region, a certain indifference, and unfortunately, that's led to a lot of bad public policy, and about a lot of bad outcomes for Angelenos.
Can I build on that for a sec? I'm skipping ahead, but you had a quote that really resonated with me, and I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people, especially because of this current state of Los Angeles. Yeah. 2025 has been a difficult year. I mean, knock on wood, we're getting our footing, but it definitely started as the worst year in
bad year.
Couple generations.
Yes, a very bad year.
There's a quote that you said, "I think a lot of very bad decisions have been made in the political sphere about housing, employment, unsheltered people, about the political process itself. A lot of bad decisions over the last 40 years have been made in part because Angelenos don't know very much about their own history. They're unaware of how much the past impacts them, how much of the past is present in the today. So I've tried to blend historical insight and contemporary perspectives to suggest to my readers that an awareness of the burdens of the past and an awareness of the impact of the past and awareness that there is a past is important to them."
Yes.
And important to us. Can you talk a little bit, and I don't want to get quote unquote political, and I don't think that it's going to shock anybody that the bad political very bad decisions in the political sphere. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot politically or anything, but in a general sense, can you kind of talk about that? Like what has led or what inspired that quote?
Well, a deep understanding of the importance of historical awareness inspired much of that quote.
Yeah.
But also an awareness that the political structures that we have at the city of LA level, at the county level, at the state level, perhaps are not working as best as they might for us. Yeah. Partly because times have changed and changes has become very rapid. But also we have to understand that those political structures, those forms of government and the processes of power that are transmitted by them were aimed at a different kind of Californian or a different kind of Angeleno. We're very different people today. Demographically and socially, we're incredibly diverse. And though we all celebrate diversity for the most part and talk about it, we don't really understand how political structures and the corridors of power were meant for a different world. And we need to develop strategies for the contemporary Los Angeles, the people who we are today, not the people we were in 1950 or 1900 or 1850. And one good example of that is, though it has been attempted many times since 1920, reforming the charter of the city of Los Angeles has never fully dealt with how power is conducted, how power is transmitted in Los Angeles. And we see the sad outcome of that in all kinds of bad decisions about how city government does what it does. And it's aimed, as I said in your quote, it's aimed at policies toward homeless people, policies toward housing, policies toward working people. They're not good choices have been made, partly because the system of government under which we operate are not aware of who we are, is not fully aware of who we are. Long ago, I wrote about that problem and said that when Angelenos look at their city government, and I was speaking specifically of city government in the 1990s, they saw this eyeless, unmoving, fixed mask of power. They didn't see a human face when they looked at government in Los Angeles. They saw this mask of power, and that's still partly true today.
How can that be improved? What can change, or can it, in our entrenched system?
Well, it has to become less entrenched. More people need to get involved in the system at the grassroots level, to push from below, and change needs to be enforced at every other level to bring more people in, more diversity in, more different voices in, to make city government, county government, state government look more like us and less like that faceless mask, that eyeless mask.
And you've always been a constant thread running through all of your work. And by the way, it's not just the books. LA Times contributions, KCET, so many essays. I mean, when I was doing research too, I'm like, wow, he's appeared in basically every publication throughout the nation.
Well, not so much, but I was very lucky to have a lot of opportunity to reach out to LA residents and residents of Southern California through the Los Angeles Times, which is very kind to me.
The LA Times, civic institution with its own issue, facing its own issues. Yes, indeed,
exactly.
But a common thread, and it's very important because I pound the table on this as well. Thank you again, you've inspired. But the erasure and displacement and forgotten nature of so many of our important cultures, and the indigenous people, of course. But I mean, again, Japanese internment, African Americans, racist police. I mean, Los Angeles has a good history of not a good history, a strong history of forgetting and erasing. And you've really done a lot to ensure that, you uplift communities and acknowledge communities that have been erased, and go into your point with the government and inclusion and getting more voices and a more diverse set of voices. You look around Los Angeles, one of the great things about Los Angeles is you can go to any strip mall, any restaurant, anywhere, any community, which I love, and you see the people, Koreans, Armenians, Jewish, everything. But to have an impact and to have a voice representative of all those cultures and people, how can that be done? How can we just implement that, or how can that be implemented more widespread in Los Angeles?
Well, again, it requires a movement of people. It requires people getting together in their neighborhoods, in their communities, in their cities. It requires brave men and women to step forward to become elected officials, and then to speak to those issues. And it requires a willingness on the part of the structures of government to respond to what's going on around us. Not to be reactive, but to be proactive, to do things that will lead to the city and the region and the state you and I deserve. We should have the government, state, local, federal government we deserve. And at the moment, we don't have the governments we deserve.
It's such a tall task, especially considering now, people. I don't even want to use the word apolitical. People want to be non-political, where, you throw, I try to cover things pretty objectively, current events. And the first thing people say, why are you getting political? Why are you covering politics? But everything comes down to politics. And I'm paraphrasing something that you've said.
Oh, yes, many times.
About the sense. Let me see if I could get the, I'm hoping that my readers will go from their personal experience to a political understanding. Not a not a particular kind of politics, but the ability to engage in their community as a political entity. And that's a very important thing, because I always lament this. It's not about politics. It's about participation, and it's about being aware, and that becomes politics.
Absolutely, it does.
And that's the importance, and people need to not shy away from that. They definitely need to not push that away, because when you're complaining about the things that are going on and the policies, well, it's like, well, you're the one who didn't want to talk about politics or get political with it. So it's a frustrating approach. And I wonder, have you seen an evolution one way or the other since you've been writing, or even since you've been in Lakewood and Cal State Long Beach and Irvine? Have you seen an evolution one way or the other about people's willingness to participate?
I believe there is a body of longing to be more in participation with communities and the community life. People still engage as volunteers at all kinds of levels in every community. We tend to forget about how many public services are done by volunteers. The problem is that if your concerns are only reside in your own neighborhood, the houses around you or the blocks around you, one has to widen one's awareness, one's appreciation of the connectedness of your neighborhood, the neighborhood next to yours, and to find lines of communication that can bind those neighborhoods together into, one would hope, eventually some kind of political expression. And by that I mean you vote, you volunteer in the election campaigns, you donate funds, you learn about the issues, though it's harder now than it was in the past, you read the newspaper, if there is one, to learn more about what's going on. And you don't lose heart.
Right.
Because the corrosive reality of our political life today is that the forces there, just as you said, want to push you away from the political dialogue, want to make that dialogue so distasteful that you will not engage in it. Right. Meaning, of course, that those who control the dialogue will control you.
Right. Oof. Man, it's a powerful and a potentially scary sentiment.
Yes, indeed.
And it does take a proactive nature. It does take a proactive approach for people.
Courage is required, Evan. Courage is required.
Courage. Remember that. That is important. And I tell that to my son all the time. Okay. So, and there's so much to cover here. I want to read a couple excerpts from some of your books. Sure. And kind of expand upon those a little bit, because again, you've covered so many important things. And again, like a lot of my stories are inspired by your books. One that I'm working on soon, and we don't need to dive into this, is the C.C. Julian, kind of the father of the pyramid scheme, at least in Los Angeles. And it's, again, a lot of it, DJ Waldie's work, a lot of it is just fun and interesting. And stuff that's been so forgotten about. It never ceases to amaze me how great Los Angeles is at forgetting its past and erasing its past. Where one of the things that blows my mind is, how did LA forget about the biggest disaster in Los Angeles history, the St. Francis Dam, which you cover in this Elements of Los Angeles book. And again, for those that don't know, and we've talked about it, but William Mulholland, on top of his crowning achievement of the aqueduct, built the Hollywood Dam and the St. Francis Dam, and the St. Francis, and I'm really shortcutting it in the name of time, but the St. Francis Dam collapsed. 400 people, minimum 400 people perished in the aftermath.
Yes.
And it was a huge disaster. Billions of gallons of water that ran from Santa Clarita out to the Pacific Ocean. Think about just how much water that is, destroying everything in its path. And LA just simply forgot about it. And there's so many of these stories that LA is, I don't even know if it's intentionally buried, but because the narrative of we're always the city of the future and the city of tomorrow, we don't stop to think about that. For that incident aside or included, what is it about LA that we just have this collective amnesia?
Well, partly it comes from the practice of selling Los Angeles into existence. In the late 19th century, there was very little here. There was dirt, and there was sunshine, and too little water. And you had all these landowners, some of them owning hundreds of thousands of acres, wanting to monetize their holdings. So they began a powerful lifestyle marketing campaign from the late 19th century onward, selling the sunshine to East Coasters and Midwesterners and selling the dirt to those people who thought they might start a chicken ranch or a hamster ranch or a
ostrich, pigeon,
or a walnut grove. And so, unfortunately, as we said at the very beginning of our conversation, the boosters took over, and selling Los Angeles into existence meant that you could never reflect on the disagreeable parts of the past. You could never talk about droughts, although the droughts were commonplace in Los Angeles from the 18th century onward when the Spanish
destroyed
arrived.
our cattle ranch. LA is buried on the bones of cattle, and
never talked about wildfires, although wildfires have been burning in LA basin since the Pleistocene, since the days of the mastodons and the dire wolves and the saber-toothed tigers.
That's incredible. And, it's something that kind of, I think in one way we're getting better today, but in the other sense, like murals get covered up and buildings still get destroyed. And it's kind of like in that LA ethos to just keep moving forward.
But that's why you have to pay attention, because though that's true, though that Los Angeles seems to be constantly tearing itself down, that is not completely true. Survivals of the past are everywhere, just like those streetlights from the teens and 20s, just like those buildings downtown, like the Bradbury building from 1890, just like if you wander around the old industrial parts of Los Angeles, you'll see brick warehouses, repurposed now for other things, that were built for an industrial economy based upon steam.
Wow.
And so if you are alive to the remnants of the past, those remembrances can begin to evoke a complete picture of what the city of yesterday looked like. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that interesting? Why pay attention to that? It's not just antiquarian interest. It's not just nostalgia. It's because there were some solutions to the problems of living here that are in the past. And we need to find them, those potential solutions, and see if they will work in the present.
And that's the awareness that we were talking about from the political perspective as well. Okay, so specifically on that note, this is a quote from you. I believe in the book, Where Are We Now? Is there are Angelenos who understand that their nostalgia preserves more than old signs or historic buildings. Their sentiment saves us from having no place to call home.
Yes, that's true. I'm not a nostalgist, and I'm not in favor of looking upon the past merely with nostalgia. And as you said about my books, they are not sentimental. Oh. They are not nostalgic in any sense. I don't think nostalgia is helpful in the kind of writing that I do. But a feeling for the past, even if it's based upon nostalgia, is at least a starting place.
It's funny that you say no nostalgia, because it will evoke a sense of nostalgia for readers, absolutely. But you write without that sentimentality, and it's so interesting to evoke that without including in the writing. I saw that you said you have, I don't have written down if this was your quote or about you. Effective history, DJ Waldie. Okay, so it's about, it's history that feels like something.
Yeah, that's based upon the work of a very interesting sociologist named Kathleen Stewart, and that idea of affective history has some legs. It's something that's been written about a good deal in Britain and in Europe, where my books are pretty well known, and that's the kind of history I try to write. Not dry facts, not data, not even some kind of overarching, here's the answer to all your questions about why this event happened. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to make history feel like something. And if it feels like something, it becomes real to you. If it becomes real to you, you can act on it.
And it's, again, I want to know the inspiration when you're writing, before you're writing, what inspires you to be like, I am going to research this, write this, and make this an essay or part of my next book? Where does the inspiration come from? And I know it's all around us.
I see some events in the present or the immediate past. I see patterns in the present or the immediate past, and I see the linkage between them and something that occurred in the more distant past. Yeah. And if I can write about that more distant past in a way that makes the linkage from there to here, then I've drawn you through history to feel something and to know something and to make a mental connection that you might not have had. Here stuck in the ever-present present, you aren't able to make anything sensible of that past.
Right. And it's that connection that counts and that resonates with people.
So the dam disaster connects to all the other disasters. The C.C. Julian stock scandal connects to all of the financial scandals. The burning of the Hancock refinery on Signal Hill ties into all the other fires that have plagued Southern California. And so the stories of today connect to the stories of the past, and the stories have these linkages that allow one to have a broader, richer, more affective, more felt experience of history.
Do you have a photographic memory?
Oh, no.
Where does all this knowledge come from? How do you make these connections? Obviously, you're incredibly well read. I also forgot to mention you're a translator, literary scholar, of course. But how do you make these connections without? I mean, I'm obviously research, but
yeah, research indeed. But just kind of doggedly doing it. Getting up in the morning and sitting down in front of a computer screen and a keyboard, and doing the research and knocking out the words. And that's how it's done, Evan.
You gave a great quote to my friend Robert Peterson, by the way. I know you were just on Robert Peterson's podcast,
Yes, I was,
in History Los Angeles. Great guy, scholar, lover, dare I say booster of Los Angeles.
Indeed.
But he has a little bit more cynical nature than myself as well. He's very, very honest about it. But DJ Waldie was just on his podcast. Check it out because Robert Peterson is great. But when he was talking about your writing, or one thing that you said is, if it ain't got no music, it doesn't get saved.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the I don't even want to say critiques, the lauding of your work, where it is lyrical and musical, even though it's simple prose.
Yeah.
How does that compute for you? You read it back?
I'm in the writing process, I'm constantly revising my work. So some writers write a rough draft from start to finish, and then they go back and revise that. I'm revising every sentence as I begin writing the next sentence.
Okay.
I do not claim to have any special skill in this area, but I do seek always to find the rhythms. I call it the music in the prose that I write. How can this language be organized in such a way that it's not only informational, factually correct, but that it provides a certain pleasure or delight in it. And so not only am I always revising, I'm always reading everything aloud to myself. So if it doesn't work in the mouth, it doesn't work on the page.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice to any writing. That's excellent advice to myself, writing my scripts for LA in a minute. Do you still do a lot of reading?
I am, unfortunately, as my eyesight has worsened, it's harder for me to read from printed texts. So I do a lot of my research online, so I can make the type bigger. Make the type bigger.
That makes sense. Get this man a Kindle ASAP, and
I do have one of those too.
Crank up the font size. But the reason why I bring up the books too, in addition to just setting that foundation of your knowledge, is there are so many books, and again, this is just part of my collection. These are all LA books.
Sure.
I read a lot, obviously, but some books are a slog to get through, and they're dense, and the information is valuable, and you push through because you want that information, but they don't have that lyrical quality or that song, as you said, in the rhythm. And I think that's so important. And again, just another plug for DJ's books, is they are so easy to read. And, I don't think of it, or didn't think of it in the sense of lyrical, but they're just very easy and fast to read, even though there is a lot of information and thought making going on.
Sure, Evan. Just as your podcasts and LA in a Minute pieces are designed to deliver a lot of information, ideas, sensibilities, but they're done with punch, with direction. There are lots of different kinds of history writing. and I honor those history writers who have been the sources for my work. But that's not the kind of history I write. I write the kind of history you just described. I don't think it's an illegitimate form of history. I think it's quite a legitimate form of history. And although I am not a trained historian, I am a trained user of language. And I think that's where it all begins, finding the right words.
And tying that together. That's what makes it so resonant with everybody. Okay, now going back, you're on foot. You're a pedestrian more often than not. You've written about public transit, which is, since I've been alive, been a huge issue in Los Angeles, formerly the mass transit capital of the world. And, since then it's been a laughingstock of the world. And you had a quote, public transit has the unsettling capacity to redefine our experience as a built up, built out, and densified Los Angeles. If it's ever built, a subway into the West will carry more than passengers. It will bear our imagination into a city as of yet unrealized. Now that holds true today, maybe more than ever. And you wrote that in Where Are We Now in 2004.
Yep, exactly.
Which is indicative of just this narrative of public transit in Los Angeles, but still having that same discussion and that same sense of wonder and what if today, as a person who does rely on your feet more than any, but what do you think of, give me your overall take on public transit in Los Angeles and the direction that we're going, because they are really pushing Sepulveda Transit Corridor, all these, different thing, Purple Line, all this kind of stuff. Where do you think we stand now as a city in regard to public transit?
Well, we'll need to speak actually more regionally. Public transit, train, subway, bus, has gotten better in many ways. The light rail system and the subway system has become more rational through the construction of the regional connector and the extension of those lines into further parts of the region of LA County. And I am a beneficiary of the billions that have been spent by tax-paying car drivers who are very eager to see someone else in a bus or a train, not themselves in a bus or a train.
Right.
So that's the irony that Angelenos regionally and in the city have spent billions largely in the hope of getting someone else out of their car rather than getting themselves out of their car. But I also believe that the city that will expand its transit options and is doing that now, and the region that is expanding its transit options, is going to make a different place. The rail lines, the subways, the other transit options that are being created or expanded are building a different city.
Right.
Not the city of 1950, not the city of 1990, not the city of 2000 even, or the city of 2004, 2004 in where we are now. But that new city is going to require people with imaginations, right? Yeah. To imaginatively live in that city, to understand what's different about it and make their home in it. But if they're dragging with them false conceptions, mythologies, a lack of awareness, they're not going to be able to live in that new city.
It's an interesting take because there is so much. Every fight in the name of progress is beset by an equal amount of opposition, right?
Yep.
Especially in LA. And that not just applies to public transit, but almost a corollary issue is housing, which is an issue that is probably at or near the top of everybody's list in Los Angeles right now. And I think that we're about to undergo a major transformation. Maybe they go hand in hand with the public transit, but the housing, and now with SB 79 being official, piggybacking on Executive Directive 1 from the mayor, we are about to see a very different Los Angeles.
We are indeed, and we have to be prepared to live in it. Or, I suppose, as many have, unfortunately, find someplace else to live.
Right. And that's something that, going back to Lakewood, have you seen an evolution in Lakewood?
Oh, heavens, yes.
What are the things that you've noticed the most in Lakewood. Aside, I think the demographic change is one that goes without saying. But other than that, because again, Lakewood was built as like, here's a city, to paraphrase William Mullen, here's your city, take it. Here it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, indeed, exactly the case.
Yeah.
Well, what's happened, of course, is that setting demographics aside, which Lakewood is as diverse as the county, and it's actually a non-majority city. There's no one majority of ethnic or racial category. Is the fact that it's much harder for a working class family. And remember, Lakewood was built for working class people, for guys that riveted jets together at Douglas Aircraft Plant or cracked oil into gasoline in Wilmington. Lakewood remains a working class community, but it's very hard to make the kind of life that was available in Lakewood in 1950 or 1960, very hard to make that life today, because it takes at least 2 incomes, at least 2 jobs, and that leaves a lot of less social capital to be invested in civic life. So that's become much harder. People do volunteer in large numbers,
right?
But it's harder for them. They have fewer hours to devote to that,
right?
And contemporary lifestyles are very distracting too. You know, in my day, Evan, I don't know about you, in my day, kids basically socialized themselves. Your moms shooed the kids out in summertime onto the street, and they weren't allowed back into the house until the street lights went on. Now, parents are shuttling their kids from one you may know this already, from one thing to another thing. Highly structured, highly organized days for both parents and children. Again, leaving less time for that social capital to build up that can be invested in volunteering at this activity, volunteering in city government activities, running for public office, going to the PTA, all those things.
Wow. And now, one thing I want to say, and it's tough to categorize, right? It's easy, let's say for somebody like Ellie in a minute, you're like, oh, this guy's a booster. I often read some of your work and I'm like, this is a cynic. This is somebody who's absolutely cynical about Los Angeles. But then you read more and you're like, it's not cynical. These are just observances. And maybe it's me who's reading that kind of projecting the cynicism a little bit.
Oh, maybe so.
How would you describe your kind of outlook and perspective on Los Angeles?
You know, I'm a skeptical optimist. That's what I am, a skeptical optimist. And skepticism then is woven through my writing about aspects of Los Angeles and the region. I'm not a cynic by any stretch of the imagination. I'm deeply moved by the things I see, and I'm eager to have my readers follow me into a richer, more realistic, less self-deluding understanding of where they are and how that place works.
Man, the skeptical optimist. That sounds about right. That's a good categorization. Obviously something you've thought about because again, can't get one by no. Okay. I want to honor your time, but we're running a little bit short, but there's a couple other things that I want to get to. The Olympics are coming up.
I really do hope that the city comes together the way it did under Peter Ueberroth in 1984. That was a shining moment for Los Angeles as a political entity and as a cultural entity. Don't know if that's going to happen. The Olympics are nearly on top of us already.
Yes.
And I don't see the Peter Ueberroth of 2028 there.
I'm a little leery
and
about
certainly
that.
we're going to have to contend with the difficulties of national politics as they relate to places like Lakewood, places like Los Angeles, excuse me.
And Lakewood.
And Lakewood too, yeah.
There's a good quote that you had. In 1984, the image that Los Angeles projected to the world was sunny confidence.
Yeah.
What happened since 1984, civil unrest, fires, earthquakes, recessions, COVID, have reconfigured how Los Angeles is seen. Yes. In 2028, Los Angeles can make use of all of that history by bringing forward the people who embody what Los Angeles has become. And that's a brilliant quote because I had Monica Rodriguez, the councilwoman, on a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And she is a firebrand. She is excellent. I almost want to say she is to, her hometown, San Fernando, Mission Hills, the Northeast Valley, as you are to Lakewood, just fiercely proud, but also realistic. You know what? I'll just borrow the term. She's a skeptical optimist as far as her outlook of LA. But one thing she mentioned that resonates with your quote is that she was livid that the handover ceremonies did not include, by her words, any brown people and any Latinos. And that's something that is a huge oversight, again, by whoever the powers that be that arranged that. And she's made it her mission to ensure that, to use your quote, bring forward the people who embody what Los Angeles has become. And that's a huge, huge part of representing Los Angeles on that world stage in 2028.
Precisely.
And look, I'll just be honest. It's something that worries me right now because the 32 games, I think Los Angeles was that, that overeager kid raising his head, pick me, because there was nobody else that really wanted the Olympics.
No one wanted to do it. No.
And Los Angeles planted
all those boosters got together.
And they made it work. They made it a great Olympics. 1984, on the heels of the Soviet boycott, or the boycott in 1980, and the Olympics were almost on the ropes, financially and otherwise. And Los Angeles is like, let's show you what a modern Olympics is about. And again, to this day, the most successful Olympiad of all time. And now we're here for round 3, and at least at this point, 3 years away, it doesn't seem like
it's not coming together the same way.
Yeah, so that's something that concerns, if not worries me, because like you mentioned with the political climate, I feel like people are ready for and want Los Angeles to fall flat on its face. And
there are some, yes, there are.
There's going to be people that are going to point and laugh if things go awry, and that worries me because we are this great city, and we have all the elements in Los Angeles that will make, that this should be another spectacular games, and there is no greater event in the world where the eyes of the world will be on your city. So that's a major concern, and I hope that they do make use of that history and bring the people who embody Los Angeles and what it's become. Now, you had a quote about murals. This was in an LA Times article in the early 2000s, and I think that this kind of involves graffiti of today as well, where graffiti culture has been in Los Angeles for a while. And we're starting to see it more and more. And I've had people on this show, Ronick, Two-Tone, some important people in the graffiti culture. We're seeing that more and more. The graffiti towers. We're a sparkling example or a sore thumb example, depending on your perspective. But you had a quote that said, picturing Los Angeles should not be left to the curators, meaning like the museum and the erudite. Since cave paintings 30,000 years ago, people have been marking their walls with what they fear and what they love. Already worn on the walls of Los Angeles is what we desire most. Just go look for it. Still to be painted by a new generation of muralists are all of the things that we hope not to lose.
Yes.
First of all, I think that's brilliant because LA is the city of murals. So many unforgettable murals right here in the Valley. The Great Wall of Los Angeles by Judith Baca. Yep. Which may or may not be the longest mural in the world, but it's in the conversation. But it's more importantly a history of Los Angeles from the perspective of the underrepresented.
Right, exactly.
And it's beautiful. But I want to know, in your perspective, what do you think of graffiti and graffiti culture in that vein of the murals? Is it adjacent? Does it apply? What do you think of that? Because it is such a big part of Los Angeles, for better or for worse.
Well, I'm probably the last person to offer an opinion on the question you've just asked.
Okay.
Because I'm 77 years old.
Right.
There's a vast gulf of experience and age between me and those who are part of the graffiti culture, as you call it.
Right.
I think there are enormously creative men and women who are doing enormously creative things. And I kind of wish they wouldn't do them on every wall.
Right, there you go. Right.
But I recognize their creativity and their artistry and their technical skill. They're highly skilled technically. I wish there was a situation a setting, a place, a home, if you will,
Yeah.
where the artists who work in spray paint could display their work.
Wow.
Because sometimes the graffiti overwhelms the landscape, overwhelms the streetscape.
Especially recently, and I've noticed that. And then this is why I bring it up, and I didn't want to put you on the spot, but it was kind of a platform for me to say, like, and again, I've supported this graffiti culture and a lot of the artists, but it's out of hand in a lot of places. I just want to say that, and I want to go on record. And anybody, you guys all know how to reach me. You know I'm accessible, but there's, as you said, though, perhaps there should be, and I know there are in different countries and even different cities, areas where you can foment this art form and help promote it and things like that of that nature. But I do think that the murals of Los Angeles are something that should be celebrated. And again, like so many things are underappreciated and just really need to be kind of celebrated more. Closing with a few just kind of quick questions, if you will. What are some historic places in Los Angeles that you think are underappreciated?
Well, the genuinely historic places are fairly well curated, fairly well recorded, but they may not be not fully understood as the kind of place that they are. I mean, everybody's probably heard of the Bradbury Building downtown, but I think its story, though well known to those who are interested in architecture, needs to be better known about how that building created a sense of light and space in Los Angeles before the whole light and space movement began, 100 years before the light and space movement began. Although the millions go to the beaches in Southern California and in Los Angeles County, I don't think we understand entirely the place that that beach and beach culture, the place that it has in our culture. Because going to the beach was something that was invented here in an interesting way. In the late 19th century, people went down to the beach and they looked at it.
Which is beautiful, which is a good thing.
And they walked along it.
Right.
But they didn't go in the water and they didn't lie on the sand and get suntans.
And they were definitely not burying their bodies.
Not. And so what does that say about who we are as Angelenos or who we are as people who live in Southern California? I think we all talk about it, but we don't really understand the relationship between that moment when the bloomers and the heavy linen bathing suits came off and skin was shown. What does that say about us and how we are and how we want to become? So beaches, Bradbury Building. I think many people see LA City Hall and kind of watch it looming up as they go down the freeway. Not very many people have been inside LA City Hall. And that building is a monument to a moment in Los Angeles history that should be better understood. It was completed in 1928, literally just days after the St. Francis Dam collapsed.
Right.
And inside that building are survivals of a past Los Angeles that we need to know better, and we can know it better by literally getting up close to it because you can see it. Same is true of the LA City Library downtown. It's also filled with symbols of what Los Angeles wanted to be when that library was opened. Those are some places that I think would deserve a more intimate contact.
Great list on that. And if you can talk about, because this is something I cannot articulate. I've thought dozens of times I want to do an episode on this. I can't articulate this properly. And you just did in Elements of Los Angeles. Can you talk about the air and the light of Los Angeles and what makes it so special? I always say we had the bluest blue sky, the greenest green on our trees, and the mountains with the brown, and just all the way the colors work, and it's so radiant. But what really is it that makes our air and light so special?
Well, that's the organizing sense of this new book, Elements of Los Angeles, which is based upon the 4 classical elements: earth, water, air, and fire. And each chapter deals with that element in a variety of ways, sometimes in ways that maybe for the reader will require a little scratching of the head and thinking, well, how does that relate to air or fire or water? But it all does. I got to tell you, it does. Air particularly is significant because as a pedestrian, going back to that theme again, I'm someone who experiences the changing of the seasons in ways that maybe many Angelinos, many people in the region don't experience. The qualities of light change in the seasons of Los Angeles. They're not exactly the same seasons that you have in Ohio or New York or New Jersey, but they are seasons. And the changing light of the seasons is quite noticeable. The qualities of the air change from season to season. Indeed, in certain seasons of the year, the qualities of the light change from hour to hour. Yeah. And in 1 minute, the air is as clear and clear as the warm desert air that it comes from. And a few minutes later, the mountains behind Los Angeles disappear in a white cloud. And it's not mist or smoke or haze or even smog. We have that too. But it's something called air light, that the tiny fractured bits of granite from the San Gabriel Mountains, the San Bernardino Mountains, hang in our still air and reflect the sunlight back to your eye. So as one commentator put it some years ago, the air of Los Angeles at times is filled with billions of tiny moons shining moonlight during the day back in your eyes. So you have to understand that in order to understand something about the air. And then, of course, there's in the air, there's bird song and the scent of jasmine and honeysuckle, but also, sadly, as we know, the scent of wildfires as well.
Right. Man, so it really is scientific, topographic, and the components of what, it's not just it looks better. There's actual rationale and what makes our light different. And, that's part of the reason why Hollywood ended up settling here after a couple other tries. And the smells as well. Like everybody knows, their neighborhood, their neighborhood smells a little bit different, things like that. Okay, real quick words on Diane Keaton, just because she passed away and I have not spent, my parents idolized her, loved her. She did so many incredible things in her life, a style icon, brilliant, strong woman. What was it like working with her, and how did California Romantica come together?
She had read Holy Land some years before when it first came out, and when she was seeking a collaborator to work on the text portion of her book, she inquired about who might work with her, and my name was suggested. She contacted me. I was surprised and gratified. We had a wonderful working relationship on that book, and on a second book a few years later called House, a very different book, but along the same themes of how architecture makes places. She knew a great deal about architecture, and she knew an awful lot about individual architects and their work. She was a collector of information about architecture, and she, of course, herself was a buyer of classic houses and restoring them and selling them. She was a maker of architecture, if you will, or at least a reviver of architecture in many ways. And always a delight to work with. Those who may remember her from movies like Annie Hall, she was only a little bit like Annie Hall. Only a little bit like Annie Hall.
That's interesting, but that's pretty incredible, and rest in peace. One other thing I want to ask is, were you surprised by the reception of Holy Land when that was released? Absolutely
Surprised. When I was writing Holy Land in the late 1980s, and it was pretty slow going at some points because I was working very hard for the city of Lakewood then. I thought I was writing some rather literary pieces that would find a home in university or college literary magazines, and my audience would be other people who read those kinds of magazines.
Right.
So I was amazed when I got a phone call from an agent in New York City. It turns out that a friend of a friend had sent some pages of Holy Land to an agent in New York City who read them and who called me. Now, Evan, you got to understand, New York agents don't call unknown, unpublished writers out of the blue.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So I sent him what was the manuscript at that point. It wasn't completed yet. And a couple of days later, he called me back and said, I think I'll take you on as a client.
Wow.
And very quickly, he found a couple of publishers who were interested in the book. There was a little bit of a back and forth between the publishers and the agent about which one would get the rights. They ultimately went to W.W. Norton, a prestigious New York book publisher. Thanks to the editor there who picked up the book. Her name is Jill Bialowski, a well-known poet. And the book was published in late 1995, early 1996. And shortly after it was published, I got a glowing review. Well, I shouldn't say that. I got a very positive review from the head, the lead reviewer of the New York Times. Her name her name is Michiko Kakutani. She's no longer the lead reviewer. And this may be just my bias, but Michiko Kakutani was kind of noted for not liking very much.
She was a critic, yeah.
But she liked Holy Land, had concerns about it, but overall liked it. She got it. Every bit of it didn't thrill her, but she got the point of the book. So with a major New York publisher, the very kind words that Joan Didion said about the book that you quoted earlier, and with a very positive review from my perspective, from the prestigious critic of the New York Times, the book pretty easily made its way in the world. And it has been in print ever since. Typically as a paperback book. It's used an awful lot in college classrooms and in some graduate schools. But it was, if there are guardian angels for a book project, there was a host of guardian angels looking after this book.
It was meant to be. Yeah. It was meant to be. So, Diane Keaton. Okay, two more, and then we'll wrap up. Number one, what is next for DJ Waldie? I know we're celebrating Elements Los Angeles. Please go and support go to your local bookstore first and foremost. But if not, Amazon will suffice. But I can promise you personally, and you've heard me talk about DJ Waldie many times, and I actually did a little episode of Buy Elements Los Angeles. You will not only not be disappointed, you'll be enthralled, and it's incredible, fun, quick, informative read. But what's next? You're still right. You're always creating.
Well, before I answer that question, let me give a little plug to my publishers. The three books that are most about Los Angeles as a place are Where We Are Now from 2005, Becoming Los Angeles in 2020, and Elements of Los Angeles. All three are published by the wonderful people at Angel City Press. Thanks to the pioneering work of founders of the press, Patty Calistro and Scott McCauley. The press is now part of the City of Los Angeles Public Library. So it's one of the very few libraries in the world that has its own publishing arm. And they are continuing to publish wonderfully designed, smart books about Los Angeles. I like to think that my latest book, Elements of Los Angeles, is one of those well-made, smart books about Los Angeles.
Brilliant.
Now, to be not to be too snarky in answer to your question, Evan, what I'm working on right now is selling books.
That's not snarky. That's great. Let's go. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the business of being an author. Part of the business of being a freelance author is you got to move the product.
Do you continue to? I mean, you're always inspired. I just know just having this conversation. But do you write notes as you're? If an idea strikes you, you're like writing a note, like, okay, I should look into that, or
oh, absolutely, Evan. My whole writing practice begins with walking. I am a complete pedestrian, and like many writers through history, my best ideas and the best rhythms of ideas come from actually walking. So I have a I have the kind of smartphone where I can whip out a stylus and write notes on the screen so that I don't forget, because these days I tend to forget more than I used to.
It happens. Okay, and then wrapping it up with this. When all is said and done, what do you think the legacy of DJ Waldie is going to be?
Ho, ho. I suspect that in the end, they'll reference will be made primarily to my first book, Holy Land, a suburban memoir, largely because it has had a long and successful career over 30 years of being read and written about in popular culture and in academic
and it was
papers.
optioned by James Franco, by the way, which is incredible. Yeah.
And that would be a fitting connection, because in Holy Land, all of the threads that we've been talking about today come together. Fact, history, feeling, poetry, vulnerability in music.
It's brilliant. And in the words of Joan Didion, infinitely moving and absolutely original.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't just apply to Holy Land, but all of DJ Waldie's books. Please go out and buy. Look, if you buy every single one of these books, you're not going to be overwhelmed. And in fact, this is going to go so much faster than you think, because any page, any chapter, any insight is just incredible. And it's inspired me. And I want to thank you so much, because I would not be here today if it was not for you and for your brilliant work. The originality and the perspective that you provide is something that I've not been able to find anywhere else. And it's such a treat to not just read all these books, but to be here with you and spend some time with you. So
that's enormously kind, Evan. Very, very kind. I'm touched. But we both are in the same business together. And that business is telling people about Los Angeles. You do a wonderful job, a wonderful, wonderful, powerful job. I hope I'll keep on doing a wonderful, powerful job too, to earn those compliments.
Well, I dream of even being mentioned in the same conversation as you. So to hear that from you, I'm very honored, and I thank you. And everybody, go out and get this. Elements of Los Angeles is the new one, and it's great. But any of the DJ Waldie books, anything with his name on it, is going to be incredible. DJ Waldie, Don, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much.
Awesome. All right, LA, it's been a minute.